Hey, welcome back to Life with Angela. My name is Angela Erickson, and I'm excited to talk to you today about how to build a culture of life. But before we get started, today is a special episode. I sat down with Kennedy Hall to talk about Project Reclaim, which is a new program coming out on Pelican Plus. It's a way for us to build community with one another in a traditional way to help you prepare for Lent in a traditional fashion by starting with Septuagesima, which is something that has been long forgotten in our Catholic tradition. And so Kennedy and I sat down, we talked about what is Septuagesima and why is this important and what does it mean for different people, especially if you're a mom who's nursing still or you're pregnant, or let's say you're a husband and you work a really demanding, grueling job. What would Septuagesima look like for you, and how can people get involved? How can you get involved in Project Reclaim, and what will that look like? So I hope you enjoy this interview with Kennedy Hall. Hey Kennedy, thank you so much for coming on to Life with Angela to talk about this new initiative that we are starting here on Pelican Plus. Pelican Plus. You have been kind of just a tour de force, I guess you could say, in getting more initiatives pushed through and how we can live liturgically, especially as husbands on your shows. But I think this would be great to talk about for the beginning of my show today, because as we begin to implement or put out Project Reclaim, I want more people to know about it, especially in a family environment, because I think so much of being Catholic is learning how to build a Catholic culture within the home. That's part of building a culture of life, because of course the church is what gives life. Jesus Christ gives us life. So I'd love to hear more about what the genesis of this project was and why it's so important to you.
Sure. So Project Reclaim begins at Septuagesima. So for a little background, if people attend a traditional parish, they've probably heard of Septuagesima. If they don't, they might have, but it's not part of the new calendar. So what is Septuagesima? Well, it's the word 70. And it's kind of like there's a pre-Lent before the 40 days of Lent, which with Sundays is technically, I think, 46. And so historically what has taken place is there's this 70-day period leading up to Easter. And the first period of Septuagesima, which is the 70, Sexagesima, which is the 60, and Quinquagesima, which is the 50. It's not technically 10-day intervals. It's week by week, but it's kind of a ballpark. And you sort of ease into Lent. Now, our Lents are easy nowadays, so their easing into Lent would be harder than most of our Lents. But for example, historically when there would be no meat and no dairy, and fasting, like every day of Lent, except for Sundays, you had to do abstinence, but you could eat more food. It was pretty hardcore. They would do things like for that first week, they're going to stop eating meat, but they can still have dairy. And then the next week, for Sexagesima, they'll stop eating meat and dairy, but they don't have to fast. And then by the time Lent comes, they're kind of used to it. That was kind of the idea. So it's
So brilliant. Honestly, it's really wise. I mean, especially when Lent was that hardcore, it would be very hard on the body, just physically to go. If I just am imagining you're going from living, especially now as opulently as we do, to almost nothing. It would be such a shock to the system. I think it would be almost impossible for anybody, just even on a physical level, to do the type of Lenten penances that the church used to do. How long ago, like when did this change happen? Did it happen after Vatican II, the liturgical changes basically? So it's not even that long ago that the expectations were far more rigorous than they are today.
And Lenten practices have changed, and I am one of the outspoken traditionalists who doesn't actually believe that the changes were a bad thing. In the pre-conciliar sense, I think that they went too far after, but modern life is what it is. We've inherited it. We don't live in Europe or in South America in agrarian societies as Catholics anymore. We live in modern civilization where there's no such thing as something being closed or productivity being turned off. It's machines, it's computers, it's whatever. And one of the reasons why they started making concessions for, I think there with local concessions, it's always been a little bit not strictly universal. The bishops have had various authorities over their dioceses for this or that. But basically around the time of the late 1800s, things started to loosen up a bit. But that meant, okay, you can use meat products in your broth or to cook with, but you still can't eat meat and things like that. And some traditionalists, they think that was the beginning of the end. Personally, I'm looking at it like, imagine being, Pope Leo XIII, and all the Polish and Irish and Italian immigrants are in America, and they have to work 12-hour days in a factory during Lent. It's dangerous to be lightheaded and all that, and there's just, your boss doesn't care, the society doesn't care. You just have to do it. So those concessions, I think, were actually kind of prudential, because the point of Lenten suffering is to penitentially suffer. And the food is the way to get there, but when there's extra suffering already added in, that compounds it, and the church, seeking to be pastoral in the true sense of the word, realizes like lay people are not called to be desert fathers. That's not what you're doing, So I think that there was a lot of wisdom in the Sexagesima and Septuagesima tradition for that. And also, I will say this, one of the reasons why we want to reclaim this is because, it's been lost, and there's a trend right now, and I get it, and I've fallen into it myself. Like, you discover the traditional stuff, it all looks amazing, you want to do all of it, but that's where pride comes in, actually. Like, I grew up as a regular North American kid who played high school and university football and ate like 4,000 calories a day because it was bench press and practice, And for me to actually think that I can go fast like a peasant farmer from the 1700s, that's kind of my pride talking, because why would I be able to do that? I can't do that. I have to admit that about myself. So I have to do it in ways that are consistent with how strong I am as a person, and admitting your weakness is actually a show of strength. And a lot of young men out there, especially, they find all these traditions and they say, I'm doing a black fast. I'm going to fast like it's the 1200s. Well, no, you're not. You're not, because you can't. And it's like, I'm not a farmer, but we live around farmers, and they'll tell you, like, if you didn't grow up farming, friends of ours, they get up every day at 3 a.m. and they milk the cows till 6, and then they have a nap or whatever, and then they do chores and whatever, and they sleep 6 hours, but like with a 3-hour interruption every day of the year. If the regular person tried to do that, they would collapse. You have to be born into it, and we haven't been born into it, so we do have to reclaim it responsibly. And that's what we're doing. Is we're going to lead a Septuagesima through Lent program, which is basically, classic fasting stuff, but easing into it with using the app to have daily prayers and meditations, and a community aspect that will fill the void of the social media, but without being the social media. So it's like your people are there, but it's not endless likes and retweets and all that.
Yeah, I love it. I think about this a lot as a mom, and somebody who has like autoimmune issues. Like, I have autoimmune diseases and things like that, which really negatively impacts my metabolism. So like, a lot of fasting and stuff is not good for me, especially nursing babies and all that stuff. And then my husband is a lineman, and he grew up on a dairy farm. So everything that you're saying really resonates with what I'm saying, what I'm thinking about a lot, because my husband works. I mean, he might work all night, especially in the middle of a snowstorm this time of year. And so I think it was so prudential for the church, especially in a post-industrial revolution world where, you're right, people are working constantly, especially people doing hard labor. It's not reasonable to expect someone who's already sleep deprived and already expending a lot of energy, like a mom or like a lineman or like a farmer, to do that type of fasting. And so I love that we have a tradition of easing into Lent, but there is that type of nuance where we're acknowledging that everyone has a different state in life, because our vocations and how we live out our family life is going to just be a little bit different. And so how are you going to navigate that then for, like, let's say moms? A lot of moms, I feel like, anytime this type of the Lenten season comes up, or Septuagesima, if people are familiar with it, comes up, I feel like a lot of women are like, am I supposed to be fasting? Or, they're so concerned about doing it right. And so What do you say to moms that are listening to Life with Angela, or even fathers who are like, how do I set a good example for my children? And how do I systematically look at my life and say, okay, this penance, this is enough. And I'm not going to overextend myself and fail and then like shame myself for not doing a good job, or make it too easy so that it's not a real sacrifice.
Well, a couple things to remember. So the laws of the church presently are what they are. And legally, Catholics are not obliged to do more than the church asks them to do. And again, I don't think all of the changes since the council have been good. Of course, I don't. However, the laws are what they are. So your obligations under pain of sin do not exceed the law. And that's just the way it is. So any extra is obviously virtuous and good, but it is personal and it is not obligatory. That being said, when you read the old manuals, the old theological manuals, and writings from saints and bishops and so forth, pregnant women who have been or are nursing, have basically always been dispensed from most things because it's kind of subjective. I mean, you know, how can there be a law on how much caloric deficit a nursing mother can handle? Who knows? It's going to depend on 1,000 different factors on her own physiology. You know, when does she need protein? When does she not? Who knows? This isn't up to the church to decide, and that's a ridiculous thing to expect for people anyway. It's just you use your common sense. So there's always been dispensations, which no one really needs permission for. It's just you're pregnant and nursing. It's like, I mean, even, you know,
Common sense. I mean, it's common sense.
it's common sense. It's common sense. And Dr. K, our colleague, he did something on Sunday obligation, and he was showing the theological manuals before Vatican II, like the widespread ones used to teach priests and stuff. Women who were it said in the first 3 months of pregnancy, the last 3 months of pregnancy, and nursing or having small children were dispensed from Sunday Mass, which is like, you know, it's in 20 years of fertility time with a husband, let's say, that's like 17 of the years. You know, if you add it up.
I hear you. I think about that a lot, actually, when I'm wrestling kids at Mass solo.
So even old school stuff, like even before the council, like it was never expected that nursing and pregnant mothers would destroy themselves. And there's a really great book it's from Sophia, and it is, I think it's Letters to Mothers or something. It's from St. Francis de Sales, and it has his correspondence. We have it on our shelf. I can't remember what it's called, but it's St. Francis de Sales, Sophia Press, Letters to Mothers. You'll find it. And he's just corresponding, and it's his responses to women. So this is 400 years ago, long before Vatican II and feminism and all that. And he's telling women, like, very bluntly, he's like, stop it. He's basically like, actually, you're being kind of prideful here because you're telling me you like are faint and whatever, blah, 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 and you're thinking you have to fast. He's like, why would you inflict more suffering on yourself than God's already inflicted on you? You know, like, basically, do you think you know more than God, in a sense? He's nicer than that. So women just, you know, don't do more than you can handle because you've already got so much happening to you anyway. And then if you're not pregnant and nursing and whatever, then sure. But even then, what are the laws of the church? The laws of the church are basically nothing at this point. It's Friday abstinence is pretty much it in the general diocesan sense. So what was it like in the 1950s and stuff before that, which maybe we could reasonably recapture because we have similar lifestyles. We're not as robust as our ancient ancestors. Well, it's 2 small meals a day that don't equal a meal and 1 regular meal. And then you can add some partial abstinence or full, depending. You know, it's difficult to mathematically figure out what 2 small meals that don't equal a meal is nowadays. I think I think about living in Italy growing up. There's such a ritualistic way of having meals that it would be obvious what didn't constitute a full meal because there's just this tradition there. For us, it's kind of like, I don't know how much of a sandwich I'm supposed to eat. So just think about like, cut out all your snacks. Just eat your regular meals, cut out meat for 2 of them, cut out your snacks and, the 10 p.m. chocolate bar, and that would be a lot for a lot of moms. And it's above what the church is asking anyway. So just kind of start there.
I think that's really great advice, because I do think, I know for myself, I struggle to get enough caloric intake during the day. There are most days where I feel like I'm already only eating half a meal 2 times a day. You know what I mean? Like, so it is like, yeah, cut out a snack even, or maybe if you like to enjoy an adult beverage at the end of the night, like sacrificing that glass of wine or what have you, just making those extra penances, because it really is about learning how to say no to the will. Like, that's really, like, we have to look at what is fasting really about. It's really about learning how to say no to yourself. And I think when we exercise it, even in those small ways, you just get really, like, it just strengthens your will and your fortitude, so that when you're telling yourself, oh, I'm too tired to pray, well, you say, no, I'm going to pray now, because I've gotten used to saying no to what I'm feeling in my body right now, and I'm going to use the intellect to be more of a master over my own carnal desires.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then the point of all of that is, as you mentioned, is the spiritual life. So, I can just tell like the audience, like what I have been doing and what I will do during Lent. I have been on my own personal fitness, exercise, reclaim in my own personal life. We went through all that stuff we went through last year, and with the loss of our son and things, and it's really hard to really take care of your health when things like that are happening. So I wanted to get back on the horse. So I have been doing personally just like a caloric deficit every day and upping my exercise and cardio and all this kind of stuff. And so I've been kind of long prepping myself for purely health related reasons. It wasn't like I'm on some spiritual quest with that. It's just health related. But when Lent starts, basically what I'll do is I'll do the 2 small meals a day, and I'll do the 1 regular meal, and I won't give up alcohol entirely, because I don't drink that much anyway. It's mainly social, so it's whatever. If a friend wants to have a drink, I'll have a drink, sort of thing. But I probably have 5 drinks a month, and then I know myself. I know my moods. I know my weaknesses. If I go full abstinence, I'll be a terrible human being, and that's not fair to my wife and kids. So I'll just pick Friday, of course, and then I'll do it on a Wednesday. I'll do an abstinence on top of that on a Wednesday, and that's as far as I'll go. And then when it's time for the Triduum, I've done this before. I'll do like a 40-hour black fast where I'll just drink water and coffee and broth or whatever. Because I have done that and I can do that, and that'll be fine. Then it'll be over, by the time the vigil starts at Easter, and that's it. But some people may think that sounds really hard. Some people may be like Tim Flanders and like not eat from basically March, February 1st until Easter. That's great. I'm not doing that. That's just, I will not do that well. And everyone else around me will have they'll suffer because of me. And that's not the point.
That's the point. We don't want our penances to become penances for everybody else.
It's your
right?
Lent, not someone else's. And I know that I can sustain that. We have 7 children, but 6 living, and we homeschool, and I'm working here from the new studio, which is 200 feet from my house, and it's a crazy everything and all the stuff going on. So I know that like I'm going to crash at 7 p.m. if I go too hard, and then productivity suffers, my family life suffers. It's a mess. So I'll just push it to where I can, and you got to find that balance. And that's one of the things we're going to recommend actually in our Project Reclaim is there will be a baseline that we're going to suggest. We have no authority to tell people to do anything, so they are suggestions, right? We're lay people. This is a confraternity of lay people getting together to help each other. But there'll be recommendations. It's like, hey, you're a young whippersnapper and you're 25 years old, you're not married, you live with your buddies. Guess what? You should probably fast more, because if you pass out at 7 p.m. because you're exhausted, that's probably a good thing, because then you can't get into trouble at night. But you think about like monks in a monastery doing crazy fasts and stuff like that. they literally have a vow of silence for most of the day. You know, if I was required to be quiet and not talk to anybody and spend time in my cell, and if I fall asleep, so be it. I mean, I could eat like 1,000 calories a day. I have like 2 pieces of bread and a stout or something like that, and I'd be good to go, because like if I'm in a bad mood, I don't have to talk to anybody anyway. But that's just not how you live as a human being with a family. So we'll have different suggestions. Another thing too is like we live extremely sedentary lives in North America, unless we have a physical job, which is what, like 15% of the workforce or something, real physical jobs. Even a lot of construction jobs, you're in a truck the whole day anyway. It's like not really that physical. But so increase your physical exertion. And it could be working out, could be going for hikes, could be cross-country skiing, whatever. But you have to do that because, you know, we are made for cardiovascular resistance kind of movements. That's how human beings were created. Adam was a farmer and he was told to go garden the thing, and that's physical. So we have to do stuff like that. And since we get our food at the grocery store and we sit in air-conditioned offices, we have to figure out how to do that otherwise. And that will, in turn, help your spiritual life, because St. Paul talks about beating his body and subduing it, and we have to do the same. So, you know, there's just many things you can pull from and make it work for yourself.
Is going to make Project Reclaim distinctive compared to some of these other programs that we have coming out? A lot of people maybe have already started something like Exodus 90, or hear other prayer apps are doing things. What makes Project Reclaim unique, and why should people who are on Pelican Plus, why should little mommy Susie over there become a part of this community?
Sure. Well, first of all, I've done Exodus 90 twice, I believe, maybe thrice. I think I've done it thrice. The one time I did it officially through the program, and then the next couple times, friends of ours just kind of did it again. You know, the same thing. And it's great. I have nothing bad to say about Exodus 90. It's certainly not meant to, this program is not meant as like an anti-Exodus or a criticism or something. Exodus 90 has been wonderful for so many people, but it's not a traditional Catholic program. So, you know, the traditional calendar has significant penitential seasons built in that over the year, you know, the 70 days of Septuagesima, the roughly 28 days of Advent being penitential, the Ember days, so there's 12 of those a year, right? Because it's 12 of those. Fasting on vigils of major feasts, which was always common. No one's required to do it anymore, but it is common historically. You add all those together, and you've easily got 100 to 120 days a year where you have the opportunity to do all that penance anyway. So the church, and again, Exodus has been filling a void, and I'm very grateful to them for what they've done. For me, it was transformative when I did it. So I'm not picking on them. But, you know, it is nice to have all of that sort of spread out throughout the year. And that's what the church's wisdom always was. The church never required 90 days of penance. It's an innovation, which has been helpful, but it's not what the church has ever required. So what we want to do is we want to reclaim not just the Septuagesima time, but as we continue with this program, you know, throughout the year, there are all these penitential seasons, and we just do them as the church has always done them, because then what you do is you create in your life, you create a balance. You know, it's not like 90 days and then you hope it sticks. And again, Exodus does more than that. I know they offer things for Advent and things like this, but this is attached to the church's traditional calendar. So for example, right now, I mean, it's January 15th as we're recording this. We are still in the Christmas season. And when I've done Exodus in the past, you know, it's like January 3rd, and you're already starting fasting and penance before Epiphany, you know, which you can obviously still just celebrate Epiphany as a feast day, but it's like kind of out of joint. Whereas this, it's like Christmastide is over on Candlemas. We begin, and then we follow the penitential season. And then also, Exodus is a program for men. This one is open to anyone who's a subscriber to Pelican Plus. And it is a lot cheaper than Exodus, by the way, because it's just your subscription price, which is I think the premium is $15 a month. Whereas Exodus, I think, as a program costs $90 for just the program. So that's one thing. And then within the app, we're building out this community feature, which will be revealed soon. And in there, you'll basically find your people. So we will certainly have a space for men only. We will certainly have a space where moms can get together. And then throughout the program, we have so much on the app. We have the audio gospels. We have a bazillion prayers. We have the divine office. We have spiritual, historical podcasts about saints and martyrs and so forth. We have tons of great reading, ebooks from Fulton Sheen, who is going to be beatified now, to, Dr. K's work. Lots of my work is there. Tons of stuff all the time. We have so much material that you can sink your teeth into and that can help you in your spiritual life. So that's something I think is unique about our program as well. So I'll be honest, when I did Exodus the first time, I did the readings that came with it for like a week. And then I had already, quote unquote, like became a trad before I did that. So I discovered all this old stuff and the readings were fine, but it was just like, it was biblical commentary on the book of Exodus. And I'm like, this, compared to what is out there, what is in the history of the church, it was kind of weak. So I just didn't even follow those readings because there was just so much else that was more fruitful that I wanted to read. And with our program here, you just have options to tailor it to your own life. And we'll have various companions going through it with people from our company who will give frequent messages of encouragement and things like that as well. So there's that engagement. And then we also, one of the big things we're hoping to do, I'm finishing recording the New Testament presently. I finished Acts, I've finished Romans, and I'm getting into the rest of the letters of St. Paul. I'll be done probably, in like 3 weeks or something. And what we want to do is because Exodus, again, it's great. But what it does is it's basically like you shut everything else off. So it's like anything that isn't essential. But like there's this gray area with what is essential for social media. There really is a gray area because it's like social media is synonymous with texting and a phone call at this point. Like it's communication. It's how you get your rides together for your kids' sports games. It's everything, right? So it's like it's really hard to avoid and draw those lines. So instead what we're trying to do is we're trying to give people an option to be in that digital space that they're so used to, which is in some ways very beneficial, but in a Catholic environment. And that's what the app will give people. It's like, quite frankly, you want your dopamine hit. Okay, well, open Pelican and listen to something on the Catholic faith, or listen to the Bible while you're driving, that sort of thing. So it's a holistic, all-in-one approach.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think this is a great addition to Pelican Plus, and I hope that more people discover Pelican through this, because I think we do need more of this type of community, this real liturgical community that is developing more traditionalism within families. I think a lot of us come into it feeling like we've been denied our birthright, as Dr. K would say. And but the next step is, okay, what do we do with that knowledge now that we know we've been missing this? Well, we have to integrate it into our interior lives, into our domestic churches. And so this is a great way to get started on that before we dive into Lent. And I want to thank you for all the hard work you've been doing behind the scenes to put this together. I know it's a lot of work, and I think it's just going to be such a wonderful thing for our community. So thank you, Kennedy, for doing that. And I look forward to seeing how many souls are helped in the process.
My pleasure. So stay tuned, people. It'll be through the app, and there'll be tons of notification or advertisements and promotion. Like, you'll see it. So just keep your eyes peeled on the app.
Thanks again, Kennedy, for coming on to my show, Life with Angela, to talk about this. And now that we're done talking about how you're going to totally build a culture of life in your home by living liturgically, which really does bring spiritual life into our homes, right? This is so important that we develop a Catholic identity in our homes. And I think so much of catechizing our children is just really in living it out, and living it out with love. And so anyway, I hope that was helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you in Project Reclaim here in the upcoming weeks. So that being said, it's time to begin our next segment, Lifeline. But unfortunately, if you're not a member of Pelican Plus, you will not be able to hear all the stories that I have for you today. So go become a member today and use that promo code LIFE, and that will let Pelican Plus know that I sent you, and that will help support my work, actually. So if you're enjoying what you're hearing here, please subscribe and use that code LIFE when you get to checkout. The link is in the description below. All right, so let's get started here on these stories. Lifeline it's always so hard to pare down like what I want to talk about. It's there's always so much going on, but I would be remiss if I did not give a little hat tip to Pope Leo for his wonderful comments, very timely comments about pro-life issues in particular. He was speaking to delegates to the Holy See back, I think, on January 9th. And I was so pleased that he addressed things including surrogacy. It seems kind of like one of the taboo subjects to talk about IVF because people are so sensitive about it. And I get why. It's hard when you are somebody who struggles with infertility and you feel like this is your only way to have a natural family. And of course, it is so entirely unnatural. The whole process is entirely unnatural. But with that being said, he emphasized